So while y'all were sleeping, Wigs R Us canceled, froze childcare payments across the country. Yes, places like daycare centers will not be receiving government funding right now. And I want y'all to thank this man right here.
So Trump is now cutting childcare benefits. Yay! As a single mom, that totally doesn't change my entire fucking life. I just want to remind everybody this is part of Project 2025. They outlined this a long time ago. They want single moms out of the picture.
It really does piss me off that a racist 20-something YouTuber with no kids of his own and no investigative journalism experience would go knock on a daycare door in Minnesota and accuse an entire community of Somalis of fraud. And the end result of that poorly sourced and now debunked video is that the federal government is freezing funding for childcare across the country until states prove that they are appropriately using their funds. And don't let MAGA distract you with this.
You ever seen a whole movement shoot itself in both feet, then blame immigrants for the bloodstains? Welcome to 2026, where MAGA loyalty just got a lot more expensive. Thanks to a viral video by a 22-year-old with zero journalism credentials and a grudge against Somalis, Trump froze $12 billion in childcare funding for all 50 states. Not Minnesota, not the alleged fraud sites, all of us. And now, single moms in Alabama, home daycare owners in Ohio, even MAGA dads in Texas are realizing. When you weaponize racism as policy, you don't just hurt them, you bankrupt yourself. So grab your coffee and maybe your kid's backpack, because today we're watching the price of performative outrage come due.
So you maybe heard a lot about allegations of fraud against daycares in Minnesota, particularly from Republican leaders all the way up to President Trump. Well, now those allegations of fraud are leading to nationwide restrictions, new restrictions on child care grants distributed by the federal government. In the wake of those allegations of fraud, the Trump administration now says it's going to put new restrictions on billions of dollars worth, roughly $12 billion worth of child care related federal grants that come through the Administration for Children and Families. The administration now says before that grant money can be sent to any state, including Minnesota, but all states across the country, there needs to be provided what they say is a, quote, justification, as well as a receipt or a photo. That, again, is going to add additional steps in the process for child care centers across the country to get roughly $12 billion worth of federal funding. And it all ties back to, again, these allegations of fraud in Minnesota. Now, state officials in Minnesota, as well as lawmakers, have been investigating alleged fraud in child care there for years, dating back to at least 2019. But Republican leaders have zeroed in on it in just the last few days or so because of a viral video. This is a video from a self-proclaimed independent journalist that claims that several Minnesota daycares that get government funding are not actually caring for any children. The video particularly targets the state's Somali community. But Minnesota officials have questions about that video, including when it was shot. Was it shot during, for example, normal business hours, they ask. They say that they're looking into this, that they're taking allegations of fraud seriously, that they visited these daycares mentioned in the video this week. And none of these centers have been accused of fraud by authorities. But it hasn't stopped the political firestorm around this. Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota blaming President Trump for, as he says, taking critical funding away from Minnesotans. President Trump hitting back, calling Walz, quote unquote, crooked.
Classic deflection. Can't defend freezing childcare for 50 states. Fine, just call the governor crooked. Meanwhile, Minnesota Republicans admit they fed info to the YouTuber. So this wasn't journalism. It was staged opposition research, packaged as citizen watchdogging. And the result? Real families lose care. Real businesses close. But hey, at least the base got a 3-minute rage clip to share before breakfast.
Happy New Year. The federal government has frozen all child care funds to states across the country over a viral YouTube video that was debunked. And on top of that, turns out that Minnesota House Republicans are the ones that worked with Nick Shirley, gave Nick Shirley the information, and told Nick Shirley to visit those sites. Lisa DeMuth, who is our Speaker of the House here in Minnesota, stated that she worked with Nick Shirley. And then it was confirmed by other House Republicans that they worked with Nick Shirley about this. What's interesting is that here in Minnesota, we have on the House side the Fraud Prevention and State Oversight Policy Committee that is run by Republicans, chaired by Kirsten Robbins, who is running for Minnesota State Governor. They met 14 times last year from February to November of 2025. What's interesting is that those committee hearings are public, right? Anybody can listen in. You think they would have mentioned what was happening with daycare instead of going to a YouTuber. They met 14 times. It's run by Republicans. And then we find out that the Republicans are the ones that were working with Nick Shirley. Just very interesting things. Very interesting to me. And now, everyone suffers, right? Children across this country are going to suffer. Mothers are going to suffer. Families are going to suffer. So I never want to hear again from a Republican that you are pro-life, pro-American, pro-family, because you are destroying the American way of life.
Mic drop. Pro-family means nothing if you sabotage the systems that let families function. Childcare isn't a handout. It's what lets nurses, cashiers, EMTs show up to work. And let's be honest, most of those workers, they voted red. Now they're trapped. No daycare, no job, no insurance, no stability. But sure, keep calling Democrats anti-family while your own policies force moms back into the home. That's not traditional values. That's economic coercion.
Okay.
So while y'all were sleeping, Wigs R Us canceled, froze childcare payments across the country. Yes, places like daycare centers will not be receiving government funding right now. And I want y'all to thank this man right here. Now, y'all know the right-wing YouTuber, Nick Shirley, who went to Minnesota to claim that Somalians were defrauding the government by using daycare centers? Well, of course, Wigs R Us took that to heart. He even retweeted that. Now the Department of Health and Human Services is freezing all child care payments to all states. And this directly comes from the Trumpy administration. He says state funds will only be released when states prove that they're being spent legitimately. Don't they do that when they apply for the funding? Now, the Department of Health and Human Services and the Department of Administration for Children and Families decided to activate our Defend the Spend system across America and will now require justifications, receipt, or photo evidence before they make a payment. Now, I want y'all to note that this at first was just supposed to be for Minnesota because of Nick Shirley's investigation, well, his fucked up investigation, because it wasn't even true. But according to the Associated Press, they decided to spread that nationwide. And once again, Mr. Shirley is mentioned, not by name, but he's called an independent journalist. First, Head Start cannot use certain words like black, woman, immigrant. Now you cut funding to child care at the beginning of the year. People are going to be out of work. Most of the places ran by people of color or black people are about to be denied funding, which is going to put a lot of areas at risk. A lot of parents are going to be in a bind because they dropped their kids off at daycare, at child care, in order for them to go to work to make money to pay for this child care. Welcome to 2026.
So Trump is now cutting childcare benefits. Yay! As a single mom, that totally doesn't change my entire life. I just want to remind everybody this is part of Project 2025. They outlined this a long time ago. They want single moms out of the picture.
This isn't accidental, it's architectural. Project 2025 explicitly aims to shrink the social safety net, starting with programs that empower women to work independently. Why? Because an economically dependent woman is easier to control. And if you think that's paranoid, ask yourself, who benefits when millions of working moms are forced to quit their jobs? Hint, it's not you.
They want moms that work back in the home, so we can just be baby factory. Yay! There's nothing I wanted to accomplish with my life. Thanks, Donald Trump. Without childcare, I can't work. Without working, I can't get money. Without money, I could become homeless. And when you become homeless, they take away your kids. And this country totally doesn't have a history of abusing kids or trafficking them once they're in that system. Oh, also, they're building a bunch of concentration camps in a bunch of warehouses all over the country to put you in once you become too poor to function in this society. Yay! And they can put you in there simply just for looking homeless or seeming like you have any mental illness at all. You a little depressed? Lock you up. Because then they can just use you as legal slave labor. Fun. Or force you into being that baby factory. Welcome to 2026 and Happy New Year's, guys. It's gonna be so fun.
So, how is this gonna solve anything? Y'all peeped it. So, I have just gotten word. Y'all heard of childcare funding, right? You know, the funding that people get when they need help with, let's say, taking care of their children. Or let's say, having to take them to a daycare. Well, guess what, baby? Due to the little bull that they got going on with this child care fraud bull. And the crazy part about it is this is only happening in one state, Minnesota. So Minnesota done spoke up and said something, and now guess what? Instead of fixing the solution in Minnesota, they decided to freeze all 50 states child care funding. Let me say this one more time for the people in the back. Due to this goofy child care funding fraud they got going on in Minnesota, Wig and his cabinet of calm done decided to punish the entire country instead of Minnesota, and then resolution it on fixing that shit within fucking Minnesota. He decided to just freeze all child care funding for all 50 states.
This is the moment MAGA voters realize you're not the base, you're the battering ram. You were used to justify a policy that now hurts you. And the worst part, the fraud they're chasing? Turns out the biggest perpetrator in Minnesota was a white woman, but that didn't fit the narrative. So instead of targeted enforcement, we get blanket punishment. And guess who pays? The very people who said, lock 'em up.
Thank you, King Jesus. I don't have no damn kids, because how the is this going to work when everybody has to go back to work within the next couple of days? Don't kids go back to school sometime next week? So, how the fuck is gonna work? Did y'all vote for this? Or
It really does piss me off that a racist 20-something YouTuber with no kids of his own and no investigative journalism experience would go knock on a daycare door in Minnesota and accuse an entire community of Somalis of fraud. And the end result of that poorly sourced and now debunked video is that the federal government is freezing funding for childcare across the country until states prove that they are appropriately using their funds. And don't let MAGA distract you with this issue, or they're going to say, well, you don't care about fraud? Of course we always have, but it's never about fraud with these people. Donald Trump governs by how viral an issue is. He wants something that is grabby and divisive because it takes the attention away from how terrible he is at his job and how much money he is pilfering from us. I have a better idea. Go knock on the door of the President of the United States and ask him to provide an accounting of how he is spending our federal money. Ask him to provide a detailed accounting of his own personal finances and his proof that he has never defrauded the American people in any way, shape, or form. Because if it's really about the fraud, we would be having that conversation today, but we're not, because it's never about that.
Bingo. If this were truly about accountability, we'd be auditing presidential finances, not knocking on Somali daycare doors at 10 a.m. before they even open. But no, the goal isn't integrity, it's distraction. While you're mad about welfare queens, Orange Man is busy funneling billions to private contractors running detention centers. Priorities.
Did y'all hear about this Trump just did? If you get daycare assistance, if you own a daycare, you got a home daycare, anything like that, come on in, because we need to talk. Donald Trump just put a freeze on all daycare assistance for all 50 states. So if you get like Title 20, I'm not sure what it's called in other places, but I know here in Jacksonville it's called Jacksonville Children's Commission. And they'll pay like a percentage of your daycare. You know, sometimes they pay the whole amount, and sometimes you may just have to pay like $20, $30 a week. But either way it goes, it's a big, big help. So according to Trump, apparently there's been some scamming going on in Minnesota. So now he wants to make sure that all the monies are being passed out legitimately. Meaning he wants to make sure that the money is going to the right place. This is going to affect so many different people, especially people that have like home daycares and daycare facilities. I know in my area, a lot of them most of their clientele consists of people with vouchers. I know when I used to have my own daycare, back when I was like 19, 20 years old, most of my clientele used a voucher. It worked out for the parents, and it worked out well for me because I knew my money was guaranteed. Even though it's once a month, it's guaranteed money. And so I wonder if you guys are going to take away the food program as well, because a lot of daycares, they look to that too. Let me know how y'all feel about that down below. Does anyone get child care assistance? And, do you know how this is going to affect you? And are you ready for that? Because daycare costs a lot of money. It really does. This is so messed up. I feel like Trump is I feel like he wants us to depend on the government. I feel like he's trying to get into all of the citizens, all of our money some kind of way. Like with that student loan thing. Yeah. It's just, y'all, this is sad. We in a sad day.
Give you a quick overview for what's about to happen. If the feds freeze childcare funding, it causes immediate crises. Families lose access to affordable care, forcing parents, often mothers, out of the workforce. Childcare centers, especially smaller home-based ones, face closure due to lost revenue, and state programs struggle to meet demand, leading to enrollment freezes and wider economic disruption as parents can't work and local businesses suffer. Oh boy. Programs like Head Start are immediately at risk, impacting vulnerable children, while other programs like the Childcare Development Block Grant see families lose crucial subsidies, creating a ripple effect across communities and the economy. So other than the fact that you might have to become a stay-at-home parent, let's talk about the broader impacts, like the programmatic collapse. The entire childcare system becomes strained with potential collapses in some areas. Parents can't work, hurting local businesses and the overall economy. Reduced parental income and increased business closures affect entire communities. This is terrible. All I can say is if you work and you have children, you're gonna have to figure something out. And I'm sorry, I don't believe this was the right way to go about things. This could turn out really, really, really bad.
We have some pretty bad news for Nick Shirley. The Minnesota daycare fraud narrative has been debunked even more.
Ah, yes, the surveillance footage doesn't lie. Kids dropped off hours before the YouTuber showed up. Staff present, licenses in order. So what did he film? An empty parking lot at 10 a.m. at a center that opens at 2 p.m. That's not investigative journalism. That's ambush editing. And yet, this flimsy clip triggered a federal freeze affecting 11 million children. All because truth doesn't go viral. Outrage does.
He went to one of these daycares in Minnesota, knocked on the door, and then tried to claim there was no kids inside. However, surveillance footage from that same day that's time-stamped shows children being dropped off right before he went there. Take a look.
According to the timestamps in the videos, this woman takes a young child into the center at around 9 a.m. that day, about 3 hours before Shirley arrives at the door closer to the street. Within the hour after Shirley leaves, a woman arrives at the other door with a stroller. A larger family heads inside a few hours later.
That footage alone undermines the entire narrative that he's been so desperately pushing for the past few days. It's important to note that he did not act alone. According to reporting and one of the employees at the scene, this guy showed up with 8 masked men and cameras asking to check in a child. The staff did not let him in because they had never seen him before. Any responsible childcare facility would have done the exact same thing. This is basic child safety and common sense. You don't let 8 masked men with cameras into a daycare facility. The owner also explained that heightened fear around ICE operations taking place in the area played a role. Regardless though, Nick Shirley has been exposed time and time again for missing context, selective filming, and spreading deliberate misinformation designed to provoke outrage.
Imagine filming a daycare before it opens and claiming that's proof of fraud, and then getting the federal government to freeze funding based on that. That's not journalism, that is clickbait outrage with real-world consequences. It's not what he sold you at all, it's actually a masterclass in terrible journalism. So Nick shows up to this quality learning center around 10 or 11 a.m., shows an empty parking lot, a locked door, and a misspelled sign that says Leering Center, and then tells millions of people that their tax dollars are being stolen. That clip gets packaged as proof of massive Somali daycare fraud in Minnesota, and even helped trigger a federal funding freeze for childcare programs in that state. And what Nick Shirley leaves out of the video and is very dishonest is that the center opens later in the day, around mid-afternoon, like 2 o'clock, not 7 a.m. like a typical daycare. So at 10 a.m. when he showed up, it's outside of their posted hours. Of course no one will be there. But when local reporters went back during actual business hours, they saw kids going in and out of the building, staff inside, and a functioning daycare at the same place Nick framed as always empty. That is not proof of fraud. Then there's this sign, the Quality Learning Center, becomes a big meme. Like, how can a learning center not spell learning correctly? The owner of the building, which Nick never asked, said that it was a typo by the maker of the sign, and they already asked for it to be fixed, and the sign was only up until the correct sign showed up. It wasn't even their main sign. The sign on the front of the building was correct. This was the sign on the side of the building. State child care officials did a surprise inspection on the center in Nick's video, and they said they found kids present and attendance numbers that matched their records, and that there was no fraud findings at that site. One TV station even pulled security footage that showed kids being dropped off throughout the day at this learning center. Even on the day that Nick was there was filmed children going in and out of that building. During that day, he claimed that that building was always empty. This is why Nick's video is terrible journalism. He cherry-picked off hours, froze a single quiet moment in time, and then sold it as proof of a giant criminal conspiracy without checking basic context like operational hours or inspection records. Real reporting means you verify, you talk to people involved, you check documents, you show your audience the boring details that might disprove your narrative, not just all the clips that might make you go viral. So yeah, the system can totally have fraud in it, and other investigations have shown that there is fraud in the system somewhere, but it's not here. If your evidence collapses the second local news or regulators take a look at it, it's not a bombshell investigation. That's content farming outrage. Before you let creators like Nick Shirley shape your entire view on an entire community, ask yourself, did they do real reporting, or did they just point a camera, ignore basic facts, and cash in on the views?
We really gotta talk. MAGA, Republicans. How many times are y'all going to let them do the exact same thing to you?
This is the quiet heartbreak of red state America. You're told your problems are caused by others, immigrants, liberals, city folks. So you vote to punish them. But the policies don't stop at the border. They come home. Your daycare closes. Your hospital shuts. Your school loses funding. And still, you blame the wrong people. At what point do you ask, who's really profiting from my pain?
Like, I genuinely believe at this point, if you are Republican, you support right-wing politics, you enjoy being lied to, especially if you're not already wealthy, right? If you are of the working class and a hardcore Republican, you enjoy being lied to by this administration. You enjoy living under the illusion that they provide of unchecked whiteness and basically the only reasons your lives are falling apart strictly being because black and brown people live next to you. I really believe you guys enjoy that lie, and you would rather let that lie continue. You would rather let it resurface in so many different ways and allow these people to take everything from you. And that's because, I've said this before, I've said this many times, racism, prejudice, that will supersede any other type of trauma that these people experience. And for these people, it would not matter if Donald Trump walked into their home with a can of gasoline, sat their entire family down into the living room, poured the gasoline on the ground while looking you in the eye, set it on fire, and walked out
locking you inside the house. You would not have a problem with it if you knew he did the exact same thing to a black family or a Latino family right before he came over. All 50 states have their child care funding cut by this administration based off a story that we all know is not real. Allegations of fraud that have been tried and prosecuted many times over. People are already in jail over this issue in Minnesota. And the biggest perpetrator of fraud was a white woman. But as always, those facts were not worth looking into by Republicans.
There it is. The inconvenient truth that derails the whole narrative. But facts don't matter when the story serves a purpose. Rally the base, demonize the other, justify cruelty. Meanwhile, actual fraud, by anyone, is best handled through existing legal channels, not federal funding freezes that hurt innocent families. But nuance doesn't trend. So here we are.
And because of it, millions of people who voted for this man no longer have a way to see their children cared for while they go to work. They want you to suffer right along with those libs you think that they're owning. They want you to suffer right along with all of those left-wing nut jobs that you all think are being, rightfully harmed by this administration. Maybe one day you'll realize they don't discriminate the same way that you discriminate. They might have the same opinions of black and brown individuals that you have, but they are trying to oppress you as well. If you are not in their tax bracket, you are getting put down just like the rest of us.
This isn't about left versus right. It's about who gets to thrive and who gets sacrificed for a headline. Orange Man didn't cut childcare to save money. He did it to manufacture chaos, fuel division, and reward loyalty with suffering. And if you voted for him thinking he'd protect your family, maybe it's time to ask, who was your family to him? Drop a comment. Share this with a parent who needs to see it. Because next time they come for someone else, it might just be your turn. Real quick, by becoming a channel member, you're not just supporting our work. You're helping us amplify voices, fight misinformation, and keep important conversations alive. Membership gives us the strength to keep producing content that matters. Join today and stand with us in shaping a better future.